Okay, so you're live.
Excellent. I want to thank everybody for being here for the O&A committee meeting for March 15, 2021. Before we start, if there's anybody here for the West Gloucester Fire Range, due to new information and different things we have to look at, this will be continued until April 5th, Joanne? April 5th. So if you're on tonight, we're not going to be hearing this. And thank you for paying attention. And we'll move on. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the committee during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button and you can press to request to speak. Please use either of these options to be recognized to speak. Thank you. On the meeting tonight, we have also, other than myself, we have Councilor Blank, we have Councilor Hara, we have Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Holgram, we have Nicole Kaiser, we have Chris Saccaranza, and we have Chief Ed Conley. And thank you all for being here tonight. It's like one big happy family. I love you all.
Councilor Gilman.
Oh, Councilor Gilman. I missed her because she's not on my screen. No, now she is. Sorry about that, Val. So our first order would be a management appointment for Nicole Kaiser, and this is going to be moved to the June 14th, 2021 meeting. So we won't be having this tonight. There'll be another 90-day appointment for Nicole. Thank you for your hard work.
Sean?
Yes.
Just for the record, it's Kaiser.
Kaiser, I'm sorry.
I understand. I've been pronouncing it wrong too until she chastised me last week to pronounce her name correctly. So I just want to put it on the record that we all say Kaiser, not Kaiser from now on. That's all.
At least I chastised. I didn't chastise you. I did it in private.
I know. No.
Well, I just got chastised.
Yeah, I know. I'm just razzing her.
So
if I had a nickel, I could retire at this point.
So for now on, it's Nicole.
That's easy. Thank you.
Excellent. So up next, we have boards and committees for reappointments. And up first, we have the Queen City Commission, Jamie Matheson. Jamie, you on?
I don't see her on the attendees.
I don't either. So at this point, because of past meetings, we're going to move on to the next one. Robert Chandler.
Hang on. Yes, I'm here.
How you doing, Robert, tonight? You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be reappointed to the Historical District Committee?
Sure. I'm an architect. I live in Gloucester, but work in Boston, or did pre-pandemic and still do remotely. I'm interested in the condition of the downtown, particularly the Historic District Commission, and believe that I have some skills and experience to offer people who come before the board to make improvements to their buildings.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Do we have any councilor questions? Any comment?
No questions. Just a comment. Robert, what do you like? Bob or Robert? Rob, how do we
Rob.
Rob. All right. Rob, I just want to give you a shout out for appreciation. You know, these boards, commissions, and committees, they're run by volunteers, which makes our job a hell of a lot easier doing what we do. Seeking recommendations. So we appreciate you stepping up and helping not only the mayor's office, but the city council keeping the community in check. So it's a really good commission. Bob, what's his name there? I'm having a super brain fart right now. No, why not? Anyway, Bob Whitmarsh. He's on the Historic District Commission, isn't he? Isn't he the
I
chair?
believe so, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so Bob's awesome. So if you have any issues, pick his brain. He'll be able to help you with anything. And the same thing with the council or the mayor's office. If you have any questions or concerns, definitely reach out to any one of us and we'll help you out in any way. And this goes for any member of any appointed board, commission, or committee. So thanks again, Rob. We appreciate your volunteering.
Okay, appreciate it.
Councilor
Thank
Harrow.
you.
Jamie, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, Rob, I want to thank you for stepping forward. I'm sure you'll be a tremendous fit to the committee, and we appreciate your willingness to help the city.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'd like to say, Robert, thank you for continuing your support. We have a beautiful downtown, and history is very important to a lot of people. It may just not be the history that you read in books, but architecture and the way we look at things. And to preserve it is something that we take very valued. Do we have a motion?
Yes, we do. One other thing before I read the motion, Rob is, this is one of those commissions that some people need to have their hand held for guidance. Just so you know that you may have to actually reach out to people and make sure that, the clapboards are in accordance with the historic value or the window sash and things like that. So people really need their hand held on this commission and not just be told, you need to do this because, and that's the final,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
we've been trying to do that over the past few years just to
Yep.
make it easier for proponents to do their
Awesome.
presentation as well.
All right, so I will read a motion. Ordinance Administration recommends that the city council reappoint Robert Chandler to the Historic District Commission, term to expire 2/14/24, and I so move.
Second,
All in favor?
You do a roll call, Bob.
Sorry, roll call. Councilor LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara,
yes.
Councilor Nolan, yes. The motion passes 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Next we have up the Magnolia Peer Advisory Committee. Is Lisa Nagallo available?
I don't see her on the call.
All right, so at this point, we actually have a recommendation to rescind our motion for reappointment.
Well, Sean, can I touch on this before we make a motion?
You can.
Yeah, so the chair of the Magnolia Peer Advisory Committee had reached out, I think, to a couple of us at some point last week. And we were notified that Lisa hasn't been to a meeting in 2 years. It's disappointing. I know Lisa. Lisa's a great person. But we do need acting members on these boards, commissions, and committees, not just a title that you've been appointed to it. So we're looking for not just a fanny to put in the seat. We're looking for somebody to shake and move things. So this was brought to our attention, like I said, by the chair of the advisory committee. So this is why this is before us again. It was voted up last week or 2 weeks ago to committee until it was brought to our attention about the attendance. So there is an attendance criteria to these boards, commissions, and committees. And we're going to try to uphold them from here on out. So, all right, I guess that's it.
Councilor LeBlanc, I appreciate that that's true to all committees. Maybe some committees feel as though they haven't met because of COVID, and they feel as though that, they haven't done anything, but they all do. They all mean something to us. On this particular person, she is wonderful and she's a great asset to the community. But the peer is a very active situation with upcoming events and problems that we have to work with. And she hasn't come forward with any response to our clerk on how she wants to be a part of this. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I'll read a motion. Ordinance and Administration would like to recommend to rescind the committee's vote and recommendation to the City Council of March 1st, 2021 to reappoint Lisa Nagallo to the Magnolia Peer Advisory Committee, term to expire 2/14/24, and I so move.
Second,
All right, so we have a motion and a second. We'll go by roll call vote. Council LeBlanc,
Yes, on the rescinding vote.
Council O'Hara,
yes.
and myself. I wish Lisa could have been here tonight, but it is what it is, and I appreciate everybody that wants to help, but we do have to be able to fill committees and have a quorum, and so the motion passes 3 in favor, 0 opposed. Next, we have we're on to CC 2020-14, a request that the state legislature file a home rule petition regarding the raising of parking fines pursuant to 20A.5 Chapter 90 of the general laws. And we'll open this up for discussion. And I can lead this discussion if people would like.
Sure.
Okay, so basically we were in flux with a lot of situations last year with COVID, and it ended up being a situation where we're trying to find a way for parking. They wanted to hit the beach parking fines to go up a little bit more. Councilor Gilman wanted to respect her quarry boundaries and do something with the quarries. The bottom line is, through all of this stuff that we're looking at here, is that we have antiquated information on parking in violations in state needs versus parking tickets versus what's on the books for us. We can create a quarry resolution for parking, and we can ask to raise the beach fees on the parking. I'd like to ask the state for a home rule petition for a $150 maximum up to for all parking situations in the city of Gloucester. This could be for a handicap violation. This could be for a taxi cab violation. Anything above, I believe, 50 or 60, we have to go to the state. And instead of going back and forth with the state every time we have an infraction, I think we go up to $150 and we decide at a later date which infractions deserve what price. This would be best for us and for the state not to have to intervene every year with how we're looking to govern our parking restrictions. And I'd like to ask for our committee to speak first.
All right. Hold on a second. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I've got a couple of questions for the chief, and also the former chief, Councilor McCarthy, if our chief can't answer these questions. So Ed, if we were to, all right, first of all, how much does it cost to add things to our ticketing books? Is that a problem? Is there a line that we can add things to? Say, if we were to gonna add a $150 or $125 ticket, is there a line that there's a reason why we could put that in there? Or is this something we'd have to change all the books?
Well, it depends on how many, Council. It depends on how many changes were made, because you can imagine where it could become. If it was 1 or 2 simple changes, we could sit like well, I should back up one moment to say that not all tickets that are issued, in fact, the vast majority of tickets we issued are done electronically. You get the little printout, the little white printout. So that's just a matter of updating software, and that prints out. For our officers some of whom still use the old patrol books, and we are in a process of trying to phase those out through training and adopting more of the same equipment that our parking enforcement officers use. If it was a handful of changes, they could simply in the short term cross out a number and write it in. There's usually at the bottom there and other thing that you can write in as well. So as long as, but there are a lot of changes, we'd probably have to consider doing away with those parking tickets and just having them reprinted.
Yeah, I think the books are outdated anyway, because I know from the traffic commission going to the traffic commission meetings, one of our former police officers, Larry Ingersoll, explained to us one day about how the ticket books were set up, and there is that little line where they can add certain things to it if needed. So yeah, if we can phase that out, and through the mayor's office and Nicole, if we can help the chief phase the ticket books out and update software, I think it's streamlining. We need to get 21st century here to get these tickets so people can see them rather than everybody's penmanship. I don't even know if they call it penmanship anymore, but it'll always be penmanship to me. That it's hard to read certain things, so doing away with the ticket book would streamline things and make things a lot easier, and being able to update that software. So and then the query, I think what Sean's doing is a good idea, because it gives discretion to the officer in charge, whether it's to be heavy-handed or to be lenient on the infraction. So okay, that's my question. It's just the ticket books, because I know it's difficult to update everything all the time, especially if we're going to update quite a few of them.
True. And the other thing, just to point out as well, and I'd have to check on this because we haven't received them yet. Before COVID, we were due to receive printers from the state that came at no cost, involved, also including installation and training, that fit in the cruiser, and they were going to be utilized for this is where moving violations are moving to. So that speeding citations, that sort of thing, are all going digital as well. And I'll have to check to see if there's potentially a patch between the two things, that if an officer could just do it all from one spot, speeding citations and parking, that would be a win for us.
That'd be great. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Councilor O'Hara.
I agree with both Councilor LeBlanc and you, Councilor Nolan, and your comments about updating the system and making more streamlined.
Excellent. I do have a question for Chief Conley. I believe we had already put in motion money for the parking apparatus for the digital printouts with the large landscape, what we did for the kiosks downtown and different situations. And that led me to believe that whenever there was an update on the digital end of it, it would be instantaneous and able to program into the infraction.
Correct. The problem, Counselor, is that the digital handheld devices are typically used by our full-time parking enforcement officers, and officers do have access to them. They've never been provided full training on how to use them, but it's something we'd have to consider, and the impact of negotiating that with the union would be a change in working conditions. There's some labor issues there. Not that it's a deal killer. It's just one of the steps we have to consider. But anywhere that I can get rid of the use of paper and streamline systems, I'm all for it.
Excellent. So my basic premise behind this is to allow us to go up to $150 per infraction. That would be held at a later date for the city council to go through the spreadsheets that we receive through yourself, Councilor Gilman and Councilor McCarthy. The idea of the home rule petition is just to ask them to allow us to up to. Some of the information of handicap spots are double of what we're looking for. It doesn't mean that we're looking for that. We're just trying to make it that we don't have to keep going back to the state every time we need to raise something and give us a goalpost of 150. And then we can adopt and measure each infraction individually to make our ticket books match the city ordinances. So the request tonight would be to ask to go up to 150 with actually the penalties of late fees and so on and so forth with 20A. So I hope that we can get the electronic ticket books to you as soon as possible, and I hope it's not a union issue, because I'm sure it's going to save on handwriting. Nicole is on the line tonight, so she's probably hearing this as well. I'd like to talk to John McCarthy, Councilor McCarthy, about this a little bit.
I'm here, Sean.
So how do you feel about the actual home rule petition being asked for the 150 per infraction for the keywords up to? And how do you feel about the paper books versus the electronic in your experience as a past chief?
John, before we go down this road, this isn't a public hearing, and getting Councilor McCarthy's point of view. I know he's a former chief, but if we should be asking questions only to, Ed or Nicole or Joanne. I don't know if you want to go down that that rabbit hole with seeing where John stands with this. That's all. He can ask questions to the chief and give his 2 cents if he wants to, but asking him a question like that, I just don't want to break an open meeting law or an ethics rule. That's all.
That's not a problem. I appreciate
Just
it.
to be safe.
So basically, we have a lot of information in front of us, and we've been looking at it for a while. I think that what I'd like to do is ask to move a home rule petition to allow up to $150 per parking infraction to move forward to the full city council for a home rule petition, and then we can decide what the infractions would be after we're allowed to.
Okay. We do have an attendee that has their hand up. If they have a question, you want to, oh, we have our councilors too. Val may have a question too.
Councilor Gilman.
Thank you. I'm going to be very careful to only ask questions because I have opinions on this because I was part of the team that collected the benchmark information. My question to the chief is, I heard someone make a comment that you want to have the flexibility. My question to you, chief, is let's pretend that you have an officer on the beat and he or she is looking at residents only that are parked at Niles Beach or the quarries, for example. So my question is, when you give officers, is there a concern about being arbitrary as opposed to having a set amount from a consistency standpoint? Because I just want your opinion on that, because or is the flexibility work? I mean, I'm not sharing my opinion. I'm just interested in your thought.
No, I think I understand your question. Well, first, I think we need clarity because I think this phase we're in right now, from what I understand, is just the setting the bar at a level. I mean, you can decide subsequent to getting that permission to where you want to set the bar, where you want to actually set the fine. But should a year or two from now you decide you want to go up, you're not necessarily back into doing all this all over again because you got a little bit of wiggle room there. I don't know I know if it was going to be, if we were going to have subsequent meetings and discuss what discretion was provided to officers, I think that's a larger conversation. But I think it seems to make sense to ask for a higher number from the state as your upper limit, so that you're free to impose a fine and increase fines in subsequent years without having to do all this over again.
All right, so to be clear, we're asking for up to. It's not officer discretion on what they write for a ticket. When we come to an ordinance and we want to write a ticket, if quarry's a $50 ticket for a quarry scene, if it's 90, it's 90. If we decide that a beach infraction is 150, it's 150. If we say a crosswalk is 75 versus 40, it's 75. But those are ordinances that will be made by the city council. The only thing we're looking for tonight is to put forward a bill asking the state to allow us to charge up to $150 per infraction. The infractions would be put in place by the council through the spreadsheets that were gathered by Councilor Gilman, Councilor McCarthy, myself, and through Ed Conley. So we're not saying it's a discretionary item where a cop can say, I'm in a bad mood, I'm going to write a $150 ticket. It's basically, we're asking the state, instead of going back every year or every 6 months or every 2 years, if we can raise the rate on a particular infraction above and beyond the limit, that we have the discretion to write the tickets. So the ticket end of this would be a total and other meeting that would be held where we go through the spreadsheets and look to see what people are charging and what we feel is the best fine for our community. Right now, what we're looking for is asking the state, instead of going back and forth for each one over and above the cost, that we may be able to go up to $150 without going back.
And may I ask a second question?
Yes.
Thank you. With your permission, Counselor. So can you explain what Senator Tarr told you the home rule petition allows us to do? Because I know you had a conversation with that, and I thought that was helpful.
Well, I think the home rule petition that we had spoke about, we're looking to ask one ask and not 10.
Yeah.
It's our town. We are looking to do what we need to do to make things legal. We're not looking to purge people of their expenses. I would have to say that you'd have to ask him personally where he feels as though, but I think the gist of it is that it would be easier to have one ask with a maximum than to keep coming back and forth every time something comes up.
Okay, thank you so much for letting me ask questions. Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy.
Yeah, Sean, I just had a question for the chief that maybe can bring some clarity to the machines if the chief can come back on. Chief, how many machines do you have now? Are there any more in the pipeline? And would you foresee that if the council makes changes, that we would probably be one more round of paper tickets before everybody could get trained?
I would be, I mean, I'll take the last part first, which is yes, I think would probably be another round before we get everybody adopted over, unless I find out that the state piece of equipment that's coming in that's supposed to be for motor vehicle infractions, whether or not that can also be adapted to printouts. I believe the printout is very similar to what parking enforcement uses now, the ones that use the handheld computers. We currently have 5, I believe 3 are working properly. And then we have this through an agreement with, I'm sorry, the name escapes me, Ryan, the third-party vendor that handles all our online payments. They're able to provide us some of these handhelds. I don't know what the number is until we have to buy them on our own, but they provide a few of them as part of the contract that we have with them. In terms of getting everybody over to, I mean, you know, you have a lot of officers that have been doing things a certain way for a very long time. And it takes a little bit longer with those officers to get them to adopt a new technology. But you also have a lot of newer officers that are far more, and I, by the way, put myself in that first category, but we have newer officers that are a lot more comfortable with technology and see the advantages of utilizing that. So I think it will take a little time to get adopted throughout the department. But it's certainly like everything else. I'm sure Councilor McCarthy recalls a period of time when there was no AC or computers in a cruiser, and now we have those. So yeah, I'm very confident this is where we're heading in a short period, within the next year or 2.
Yeah, we had horses when I started it.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that.
I remember we got the old taxi cabs. Remember we had the old taxi cabs?
Yeah, the old checkers. I remember McCarthy going down to Cape on Ice and getting ice and putting it in the floor and turning the defrost on the floor and cooling the cruiser.
So just one quick follow-up, Sean, if it's okay with you, just for clarity for the council. So the quicker we could get at least this round of fine structures set, the better for you to get tickets ordered, because we are coming up to the summer.
Correct. Once, I mean, it's obviously the summer, you know, come Memorial Day, maybe even a week or two, depending on weather, things are shaking and baking in terms of writing tickets. Now, again, the majority of tickets we write out by parking enforcement, full-time enforcement officers who do write the electronic tickets, but the quicker we can get out new parking ticket books, and if it's only a handful of them, we can always adapt the ones we have, change. But it sounds like you might be considering a wider swath of changes across all the fines.
Counselor Gilman.
Thank you, Counselor. So if we are able to get this approval expeditiously through the state, would it behoove us to be bringing this conversation about what we want the numbers to be simultaneous to waiting for the approval? Because we have to wait for the ordinance to become effective. And, you know, I would imagine minimally the beach parking and the residents, in anticipation of another summer like last year, would be two that we'd really want to address proactively and not wait to get the approval from the state. Then, because then there's no way that we would have this ready to for prime time by the beginning of the summer.
I would say that proactively, we're trying to do a home rule petition. This could take 1 month, it could take 8 months. So we're not really sure where it's going to go. We have the other emergency orders that happened last spring into the summer, where we can do, you know, regular resident, non-resident parking. I think that if we put this through, I wouldn't move on changing ticket books until we got the approval. We do have the other section on the tickets, as Chief Conley had said, but we need to get the ball rolling. And that's why I think the key word is up to, and not looking at individual and asking the permission, and then we can define each restriction one by one per the spreadsheet when time to come.
So Sean, what I think Val's trying to get across is that maybe appoint 1 or 2 city councilors, one from a different subcommittee, obviously, to work with the chief and possibly come up with a group of numbers. So when we do have this, if it does get approved by the state, that we are prepared to put, you know, section A and section B for fines, and that way we can look back and say, do we raise a handicap spot to 75 to 100, or do we go from 100 to 125, or do we go, you know, that's section A or section B, do we go from 125 to the max, you know, for certain things? I think with Val, right, Val? So we should have a set of numbers to bring forth once this is
Right.
either
Right,
accepted or
exactly.
rejected. Yeah.
So from my selfish standpoint, is $15 is just for all the folks parking illegally in residence only, you know, that number we know is, I'm deliberating, I'm sorry. So, I'm just, yes, Steve,
Yeah.
I think that it would be good to start planning what the number should be based on the data that we have in front of us, with
Right.
all the competitive data that the chief was able to get, and then the benchmarking information about other beachfront communities. Just so if we do get a green light from the state, maybe in 2 months, we might be able to get this
They were ready to go.
happening,
Right.
at least the beach and the residents for the summer, you know, rather than waiting. Because I would imagine that when we change the ordinance, we have to wait for the 31 days too after we approve it. So it's going to, you know, so that there will be a time lag. And if there's any way we could look at that for the summer,
Right.
assuming that
Yeah.
maybe there's a good momentum, it would be really helpful, at least to the Ward 1s and the Ward fours and,
Yeah, I agree with Val. I think we should, and I'll volunteer to work with the chief on this as being part of O&A, come up with some of the numbers. So if we want to try to get another city council or something like that, put the word out, we can have somebody else come in and give us a hand trying
yeah,
to trying
if
to
you're
conjure
looking
up.
for a volunteer from P&D, I'd love to participate.
Okay.
All right, Steve, Councilor Gilman and Councilor McCarthy, myself have already worked with Ed on a lot of spreadsheets.
Perfect. I'm
If
good with
you
that.
want to run with that, that'd be awesome. That's fine.
If you want to just leave Val and John with Ed to come up with these numbers, I'm totally fine with that too. That works for me.
Yeah, and I've been involved myself.
Okay.
The issue isn't really the numbers of the ticket book matching what our ordinances are right now. We're looking to see if we can raise the maximum to 150.
Right.
And then follow through, because for the last 3 months we've been stumbling on this, and we're losing. We lost 3 months of time with the state to raise the amounts. So instead of being, I don't want to say nitpicking, but going after each ordinance one by one on the parking infractions and finding out what the date is, or whether it's out of date or too low, too high, asking the state for a blanket $150 with the amendments of the maximums and penalties for taxes or sorry, late fees on top of it. And then we can break down which ordinance in law and parking enforcement we need to change in the future.
I don't have any more questions.
Councilor O'Hara, anything else?
No, I think you've hit everything and I'm in favor of moving along.
All right, so this is basically asking the state to allow us to go up to $150 per infraction. It does not mean that we're going to charge $150 per infraction. It just means that we're going to revisit this and pick our parking enforcement and try to match our selective communities around us in other beachfront communities with the same parking issues. So it's a home rule petition to ask up to. So we're gonna have to change a little bit of the language, and if you could bear with me a little bit, I will try to read the motion in front of us with, do I read it with what I think, or do I amend the emotion that's in front of us and then move on to it to send it to council? Or do I read the motion and send it to council to be moved and amended? Councilor Blank.
I would read the motion that's before us and then make any amendments tonight. After you've read the motion, after we voted on it, make any amendments that you want to make to it after we've read it tonight and send it to council with the amendments rather than reading it at the council with the amendments. I mean, amending it at council. So why don't you want me to read the motion and you make any amendments if you want?
If you could, I could use some help on this because it's a
Yeah.
long.
Yeah,
And,
I'll read the motion and then however you see fit. If you feel like amending it now, I think it's cleaner to do it now. But before we do read the motion, we have an attendee that's had her hand up a couple of times. I don't know if you want to accept any questions. I know this isn't a public hearing, but we can listen to public questions.
if Mary Ann would like to speak on something tonight, I'd love to hear from her.
Hi, Marianne Albert Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue. I would just like to say, while I live on Mount Pleasant Avenue, I also own a home that's next to Niles Beach. And I go to Niles Beach daily. And I often watch the individual who is writing tickets be assaulted daily by people who are questioning the amount of their ticket. And I just want to kind of make a suggestion. Can the signs that say resident parking only also state subject to a fine of up to on whatever you decide, $150. That way, if someone tries to attack the person writing the tickets, that person can put the hand up to the sign and say, look at the sign says. And I just see it too often, and it's terrible. It's terrible to watch. A person is parked illegally, and to watch this person who is doing their job being assaulted in a way that should not happen. I just feel like it could be so simple if the signs say subject to, when you're trying to change it now, that should be added to the signs. I think it could really help everybody out in the future, and I just wanted to pass my information along to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.
Thank you, Marianne. And I actually would like to say that in our recommendation, it doesn't really say anything about beach or anything. I'm reading it right now. It looks like that we can do a home rule petition act in up to $150.
So I
Yeah.
think what Marianne's answer is that would be a simple request to the DPW to add language to some of these signs.
Right.
But it can be done, yes.
And any of this is resident parking should say resident sticker parking.
Right. But this is just to get the ball rolling for the state to approve of this.
Right.
Okay. We're ready for a motion there, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'll make the motion, and if you want to amend it, you can amend it after we move and second it. All right, so Ordinance Administration would like to recommend that the City Council requests that the state legislators file a home rule petition,
I agree.
and based on said petition, the General Court approve and enact a special act substantially as follows. Section 1. Notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, the City of Gloucester may, upon approval by the City Council and Mayor, raise any parking fine established pursuant to Section 20A and a half of Chapter 90 of the General Laws, provided, however, that a fine established for all other parking violations pursuant to said Section 20A and a half of said Chapter 90 shall, subsection 1, if paid not more than 21 days after issuance of the fine, be not more than $150. Subsection 2, if paid more than 21 days after the issuance of the fine, but before the parking clerk reports it to the registrar as provided for under Section 20A and a half of said Chapter 90, be not more than $160, and subsection 3, if paid more than 21 days after the issuance of the fine and after the parking clerk has so reported, shall not be more than $175, and I so move.
Second.
All right, so it's been read. I actually think it covers everything we said. It's not specific to the beach or anything. I think it actually works in the favor of just raising it up to. Is there any objections to it being as read for that?
Right. So we're in council discussion part of it. So if I can go first.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to support this just for said reasons earlier, what Sean said about not having to petition the state every time we want to raise a parking fee. I think we've done it 2, maybe 3 times in the past 10 years. So if we get a ceiling where we want to be at, that'll allow us to go through and tweak all our violations to a set amount. It doesn't all have to be $150, but some of us feel that, the beach parking, I don't even know what it costs to go to the beach anymore. I don't go to the beach to park, but if you've got a car full of 6, 7 people, or how many you can fit in a car, and you all pay $10 each to go to the beach for the day, sign me up for that. I'm in that car because I think the beach parking is less than that. So we need to make sure that we hit people in the pocket, just in certain areas that are a nuisance, the quarries, the beach, the downtown area. And like I said earlier, petitioning the state every 2 years to raise one parking fine just doesn't seem logistically correct anymore. So I think setting the ceiling at $150 with our discretion on what we want to move forward, I think it's a good move by the city council. So I will be supporting this evening.
Council O'Hara.
No, I agree with Councilor Blank that it is a good thing to get a number that we can work with and reduce our revisits to the state.
All right, and I as well feel as though it's a simple solution to help us in the long run from not having to ask over and over again. So we'll go for a roll call. Councilor Blank,
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
and Councilor Nolan, yes. All right, and next on the agenda is the West Gloucester Fire Range, which I said would be continued until April 5th. So at this point, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Counselor,
I'm sorry, go ahead. You're on mute, Joanne.
sorry. Okay. You didn't decide to, what you're going to do with the reappointment of Jamie Matheson. You were going to circle back.
Oh, I'm sorry. In lieu of what
So
happened,
I just want to say that we've sent 2 notifications out, one for the March 1st meeting and one for this meeting. There has been no response. So you can either continue it to April 5th, or you can request the administration to reach out to her to see if she still wants to serve on this board and committee, and still continue it to April 5th.
I'd like the administration to reach back out to her. I know her, she's a good person, but I'm not going to speak for people. And if they want to reach out again, or we can continue it either or both.
I think the administration should reach out to her. So it should just be clear, Nicole, if she wants to be on it or not. She needs to respond. If we don't get a response by our next O&A meeting, we'll take her off the agenda. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense,
Perfect.
Sean.
It does.
Okay.
So
Okay.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
And by roll call, with Councilor Blank,
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
and Councilor Nolan, yes. Everybody have a great night. And
Good
thank
job,
you.
Sean. Thank you.